President Biden joined world leaders in Normandy today to commemorate the 80th anniversary of D-Day, a somber setting where he drew a link between the historic fight to defeat the Nazis and the modern day battles against authoritarianism and isolationism. Biden did not name Trump during his remarks, but he offered an unequivocal endorsement of the global order that NATO and other alliances make the U.S. stronger. And he made Bannon, a long-term advisor to former President Donald Trump, to surrender by July 1st to start serving a 4-month prison term imposed on him for disobeying a subpoena to give testimony to the House committee that investigated the January 6, 2021 attack on the Capitol. But the judge, Carl J. Nichols, said that Bannon could delay beginning his sentence if a federal appeals court granted him more time to challenge his conviction. And since former President Donald Trump was found guilty last week on 34 felony counts of falsifying business records, GOP pundits and politicians have argued that the development will actually help his odds in the 2024 election and not hurt them. Well, late night host Seth Meyers says otherwise. He says he's not convinced. He specifically responded to the claims that voters outside of liberal bubbles don't care about the trial and that those who do care will only be more energized to vote for Trump. And in making his claim, Seth Meyers brought up polling data showing that among a group of undecided voters who disliked both candidates, 65% thought it was the right verdict and 67% of those said that Trump should suspend, that is, end his campaign for president. Former President Donald Trump says he's prepared to prosecute his political enemies if he is elected this fall. Simply making those threats, legal experts says, does real damage to the rule of law. But if he is already challenging bedrock norms about the justice system as a candidate, Trump, if he wins again, would gain immense authority to actually carry out the kinds of legal retribution he has been promoting. Folks forget oftentimes that the Justice Department is part of the executive branch, and as the president, he will be the boss of the Justice Department. And that means he'll be able to tell its officials to investigate and prosecute his rivals. Trump has made no secret of his desire to also purge the federal government of those he said were insufficiently loyal to him and his agenda. And if passed, didn't pass, Senate Republicans on Wednesday made sure it didn't. They blocked action on legislation to codify the right to contraception access nationwide. Now, this is a bill Democrats brought to the floor to spotlight an issue on which the GOP is at odds with a vast majority of the American voters. Had that bill passed, and it's called the Right to Contraception Act, it would codify the right to Americans to have access to birth control pills, patches and implants, condoms, IUDs, and sterilization procedures. It wouldn't eliminate religious or personal belief exemptions, which allow healthcare providers to refrain from prescribing contraceptions to patients and insurance companies to choose not to cover them. And a conservative activist group filed a class action lawsuit against a reparations program in Evanston, Illinois, claiming that the initiative is unconstitutional because qualification for the program is based on an applicant's race. In 2021, Evanston became the first city in the U.S. to implement a reparations program offering payments to Blacks who had been discriminated against because of zoning laws from 1919 to 1969. The plaintiffs in this lawsuit, they're called Judicial Watch, is representing 6 non-Black people whose ancestors lived in the Chicago suburb at that time. They argue that the program aimed at ameliorating historic wrongdoings violates the Equal Protection Clause. Now, Judicial Watch claims that Evanston uses race as a proxy for experiencing discrimination between 1919 and 1969. It's interesting to note that Judicial Watch has filed the city of Evanston before, and that lawsuit was thrown out. This is the news of the day, and this is Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. In this hour, I'm glad to be joined by Fatima Gilliam. She is the author of Race Rules, what your Black friend won't tell you. She's also a Columbia University trained lawyer, and she's out with a new op-ed piece in the Los Angeles Times today talking about diversity. So we're going to spend some time in this hour talking to Fatima about DEI efforts and those who try to conflate what's happening around reparations with efforts to ensure that there's diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. Also in this hour, Dr. Rob Baker is joining us. He is a professor of African American diaspora studies at the University of Milwaukee at Wisconsin, and he is a community historian. So glad to be in conversations with both Fatima and Dr. Baker today. And in hour two, you know what we do? That's that hour where we go deep, where we dig behind those headlines and bring you those stories that people are talking about. Well, in hour two today, I'm going to be going one-on-one with political analyst, former state representative and attorney, and New York best-selling author, Bakari Sellers. He is out with a new book. The book is called The Moment: Thoughts on the Race Reckoning That Wasn't and How We All Can Move Forward Now. Bakari is actually going to be in Los Angeles next Tuesday at Malik Books, and I'm going to be moderating a fireside chat with him, talking about his new book, The Moment. He's going to be signing copies of those books. So we hope all you that live in the Los Angeles area come out to support Bakari in this book event that he's having. Today, we're going to talk a little about the moment, but we're also going to talk a lot about Black men and the upcoming election. There are a bunch of stories in the news around how Black men are thinking about this election, including some recent comments by 50 Cent, none other than that political expert called 50 Cent, who was on the Capitol Wednesday advocating for Black entrepreneurs, and decided he would stop and give comments about how Black male voters are thinking, and saying that most identify with Donald Trump, particularly according to 50 Cent, after he was convicted, because, Black men like their convicts for president. Yep, that's what 50 Cent said. So I talked to Bakari Sellers about that, as well as about Tim Scott, who says he is the key to the Republican Party drawing Black voters to Donald Trump, and he's prepared to put millions of dollars behind his claim as he goes out around the country trying to court Black male voters. And all of this is in the backdrop of Byron Donalds, you know him, the congressman from Florida, who said yesterday that Black folks had it good during the Jim Crow era. He said that's when Black families were united and we were conservative. Now, he failed to mention some key points about the Jim Crow era. And I didn't have to wait for someone who I adore and just really love. He's a New Yorker, and I've been loving on New Yorkers lately because they have been holding our democracy. And Hakeem Jeffries, who is a congressman from New York, is a part of that group of Black activists, advocates, lawyers, elected officials who are holding our democracy. And our good, soon to be majority leader, Hakeem Jeffries, had some choice words for his colleague in the Congress, Byron Donalds, about that utterly ridiculous statement about Black folks had it good during the Jim Crow era. So I can show you better than I can tell you what our good brother Hakeem had to say. So here's what I'm thinking in real time. And as I give out a big shout out to my brother Hakeem Jeffries, his brother, his biological brother, Professor Jeffries, is one of our contributors on this show. And I just really respect what they stand for and how they stand up for Black folks whenever we need them to stand up. So take a look at what Hakeem Jeffries had to say about Black folks having it better during the Jim Crow era.
Inaccurate statement that Black folks were better off during Jim Crow. That's an outlandish, outrageous, and out-of-pocket observation. We were not better off when a young boy named Emmett Till could be brutally murdered without consequence because of Jim Crow. We were not better off when Black women could be sexually assaulted without consequence because of Jim Crow. We were not better off when people could be systematically lynched without consequence because of Jim Crow. We were not better off when children could be denied a high quality education without consequence because of Jim Crow. We were not better off when people could be denied the right to vote without consequence because of Jim Crow. How dare you make such an ignorant observation? You better check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Whew, just gives me chills. We're going to check ourselves before we wreck ourselves right here on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got lots to talk about when we come forward. Today's breaking and trending news, but you heard it best from my brother Hakeem Jeffries. Stay with us.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
Hi, Tavis Smiley here. We're getting closer to June 18th, and time is running out for you to register to join us for our historic symposium live on C-SPAN, Tuesday, June 18th, 4 to 7 p.m. at the California Science Center in Exposition Park. Admission is free, but you must register at KBLA1580.com right now if you want to be in the audience when the nation will see for the first time ever a stage full of brilliant Black folk talking about the urgency of now. Climate justice, climate equity, climate resilience. It's all going down. Well, it's actually all going up. Tuesday, June 18th, 4 to 7 p.m. live from the California Science Center in Exposition Park. Again, admission is free, but we're filling up fast. So if I were you, I would log on right now to KBLA1580.com to reserve your seat. Caring about the climate, caring about the community. We're KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
If you're an adult in need of an accredited high school diploma, the Los Angeles Public Library can help. You could earn one for free in as few as 5 months, online with 24/7 access. You also get a personal academic coach, plus special training focused on 9 in-demand industries, as well as a resume and cover letter to advance your career. Visit the website at lapl.org/diploma. That's lapl.org/diploma.
At Charmin, we heard you shouldn't talk about going to the bathroom in public, so we decided to sing about it.
When you're rolling Charmin, ultra soft on the potty. Less is more, so roll it back, everybody. Charmin's irresistibly soft and hella nice. The cream is always soft. It's our party vibe. It's cushion and things, so my cheeks feel fine. So what? Every booty wanna touch the sky.
Charmin Ultra Soft is irresistibly soft and more absorbent, so you can use less. Enjoy the go with Charmin.
Macy's Friends and Family is going on right now, and it's the perfect time to save on Father's Day gifts. Use your coupon or Macy's card and take an extra 30% off designers he loves, like Hugo, Lacoste, and more. And 15% off skincare, fragrance, and grooming, too. Plus, shop Father's Day specials for even more great deals. Give love today at Macy's. Savings off regular and already reduced prices. Exclusions apply.
Environmental justice is racial justice.
Environmental justice is social justice.
This is KBLA Talk 1580.
My mom has taken up going to the park to practice yoga.
My dad's going to a club, but not a book club, a salsa club.
Finding new hobbies comes with age.
My mom has started getting lost and not knowing where she's going.
Becoming lost or disoriented doesn't. Confusion with time or place may be a sign of Alzheimer's. An early diagnosis can help improve the quality of life for your loved one. Learn the warning signs of Alzheimer's at 10signs.org. Brought to you by the
We're back, and in this hour, we are tracking today's breaking and trending news with expert contributors Fatima Gilliam. She's an author of the book Race Rules, What Your Black Friend Won't Tell You. She's also out today with a new op-ed in the Los Angeles Times, a must-read. So go to your LA Times app and download her article. And also, Dr. Rob Baker is joining us. He is a professor at the University of Milwaukee in Wisconsin, and he is a historian. And I'm so glad you are here, Dr. Baker, Dr. Rob, because Hakeem Jeffries put it best when he told Byron Donald, you better check yourself before you wreck yourself. But What do you make of that ridiculous statement that Byron Donalds made about Black folks having it better during the Jim Crow era? You are a historian, you know the history of Jim Crowism in this country. Please educate anyone, including Byron Donalds, about how just ridiculous and insulting and offensive that comment is.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. First of all, there's a great book called Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkerson, which I encourage everybody to read. It talks about the horror and trauma that Black people experienced in the South. They didn't just get up out of there because things were hunky-dory. And so Jim Crow was a very horrific and terrific system. But I love all brothers, and I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe what he was trying to say is that Black people are resilient and we loved each other so much that we got out of that. But unfortunately, that brother has a penchant for spinning crazy stories.
Well, he's from Florida, and we know Florida is the state where, according to Ron DeSantis, wokeness went to die. And we know that Florida has been on a mission to ban books, to ban the teaching of Black history, to rewrite this history's narrative on slavery. This is the same education department that said that slavery was a form of vocational training and that enslaved people actually benefit from being enslaved. What did you make, Fatima, of this Florida congressman's comment about Jim Crow, the Jim Crow era, and how Black folks fared during that era?
Well, thanks for having me back on your show. I'm really happy to be here. But what I think of that tomfoolery that he talked about, it just indicates that we are in a dangerous time, right? Like the conversations that we are starting to have repeatedly, day in and day out in this country, are the conversations that people were having 70, 80 years ago, right? Wanting to roll back the clock of putting us back into the cotton fields, putting us back into Jim Crow, putting us back into a time where we are fearful of being outside, that we will be physically attacked on a regular basis. And so when you want to hijack the narrative, when you want to rewrite history, what you're doing is you're exposing people of color, in particular Black people, to not just physical danger, but danger in terms of people understanding what our journey is. And by not being able to understand our journey, then there's going to be these rollbacks that we're seeing right now on diversity, equity, inclusion, because people don't understand that there need to be solutions and initiatives and laws and a foundation and a framework to undo the harms that were done through Jim Crow, through slavery, through segregation, and through what I call white welfare, which is the ultimate entitlement program for white people, right? Entitling them to grifting based on, and a transference of wealth on the sweat, equity, labor, and wealth of Black people transferred to white people. So that's the environment that we're in, and that man is a fool.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way to put it other than the way you just so eloquently put it. We can't give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm sorry, Dr. Baker, because his track record suggests that he knows what he's doing, and we know what he is really trying to do is auditioning for Donald Trump. He's trying to position himself as someone that Donald Trump should put on the ticket as his VP, because he's someone that will speak the language of white supremacists and will say what white supremacists want to be said. He'll say that out loud, even if it means, again, distorting history and what we know to be the historical truth about that period. Let's talk a minute, Fatima, about your article. So a couple of things are happening. The attack on DEI, which is real, and that became so much of a focal point after President Gay was fired from Harvard University. The attacks on her by Bill Ackman and other billionaire folks who, before, many of them who claimed to have been liberal, but took advantage of that opportunity to really ramp up this attack on DEI. And now this lawsuit against Evanston, this class action lawsuit filed by this conservative group, Judicial Watch, claims, coming on the heels of the 11th Circuit decision in the Fearless Fund case, again, a case where the 11th Circuit will not allow a Black VC company to make small $20,000, $25,000 grants to Black business owners, claiming that is somehow, at least that's the claim, that it's unconstitutional in the case, at least at this point, doesn't look good in terms of the final outcome for the Fearless Fund. But put into context, Fatima, what we are seeing in this moment from attacks on reparations, attacks on DEI, and attacks on efforts to provide some kind of economic parity to Black business owners.
I mean, what it is epic white grievance, right? Like people complaining about solutions to fix problems where they were the beneficiary. In particular, for this case, are the 6 people that are suing the reparations initiative. I find it interesting that they all lived in the suburbs, right? Their families were in the suburbs. So what did that mean? That they were already benefiting from segregation, from redlining, from probably being able to benefit from programs that to purchase a home that only benefited white people, right? So between 1938 and 1964, right, as a part coming out of the New Deal, going through the war, 98% of home mortgages that were government backed went to white people. 98%. Right. So these people who are suing probably got one of those loans when Black and brown people and Asians were not entitled, didn't have the same kind of access. So they benefited from those programs. And now what they're doing is they're weaponizing the language of the solutions to try to create parity, equity, access for people of color, and then saying, oh, now you're discriminating against me because I don't benefit from reparations. I don't benefit when I was already a beneficiary, right? So it's really trying to triple down on white supremacy and maintaining white welfare in a way where white people just win, 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 and everyone else loses, 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 and trying to use the structure and the legal framework and the policies as fuel to back their nefarious plan to maintain domination over people of color.
And Dr. Rob, have we ever witnessed this level of, retreating, retrenchment? And obviously, we can look at Reconstruction as a period in which we saw that happen, or after Reconstruction, coming out of Reconstruction, but it's just kind of like in the last 20 years or so, not going back to the 1800s. Has there ever been a period where there was this perception that Black people made a little progress, which is what a lot of people think after George Floyd was murdered, that there was this racial reckoning, and Bakari Sellers' book, says the racial reckoning that wasn't. But can you recall, as a historian, a period in the last, say, 20 years where Black folks were perceived to have made progress, and then there was this massive backlash against that progress?
Yeah, I don't think I can think of one. Obviously, the Reconstruction era. Maybe if we go like after the Civil Rights Movement, Black Power era, the Barry Goldwater, Richard Nixon, there was this extreme pushback. And I think we're still in that sort of cycle a little bit where conservatives are sort of caught up to their vision of the world. And unfortunately, a lot of people talk about they don't want to vote, and this trend will continue unless we take control of the levers of power. And when I say we, I mean people who believe in democracy. I'm not even talking about left or right. I'm talking about people who believe that we have the ability to vote or be able to go to college. Or, this is very difficult times because the only really parallel is the Civil War. I teach a class and I ask my students at the beginning of the class, have you ever heard that there's going to be a civil war? And the students all raise their hand. And so we're in very dangerous times right now.
Oh, your students raise their hand because they've heard, like in recent times, that there's going to be a civil war.
Oh yeah, they've definitely heard that theme, that narrative. They all have heard it. And it's not like 100% of the students have heard, like, yes, civil war is coming. And my job is to open the door to the Civil War and let them see how difficult it was and how dangerous it was. And unfortunately, a lot of us have grown up in a time very safe, and we haven't felt the horrors on our shores. But I do believe in the power of Black people to tell the truth, and fortunately, that's where I'm there now.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say these students are hearing that there could be a civil war. And this is again happening in the backdrop. In the backdrop of that, Fatima, is a former president who wants to be president again, being very clear and very direct that he is going to use his powers, if elected again, to investigate and prosecute his rivals, and that he's going to literally, gut our federal government of any people that he do not find to be sufficiently, he does not find to be sufficiently loyal to him or his agenda. And many pundits worry that this time around will even be more dangerous because Trump has experience now. He's not that inexperienced businessman that had no experience with government. He knows the power of the office now. He knows what he can get away with in this, if he were to be successful in a second term, that he wasn't able to do in a first term. And in many ways, he may feel like he has nothing to lose because if he were to follow the Constitution, he wouldn't have an opportunity to be president yet a third term. So in some ways, folks believe that's going to make him even more unhinged and more reckless. As a lawyer, do you worry about what our democracy would look like? And who would be there to hold our democracy if we had an executive level, president basically taking control of our Justice Department and dictating to our Attorney General who to prosecute and investigate, and starting with his rivals. And the rivals go back to obviously even further back than Hillary Clinton, but she should be on the list. Barack Obama's probably on the list. We know Joe Biden is going to be on that list. Kamala Harris is probably on that list. So, what would that look like from a legal standpoint?
I mean, I think it's very dangerous times because people need to believe the words that come out of his mouth. He said he would be a dictator on day one. He got away with January 6th. He's being prosecuted and investigated, and he's thwarting at various corners and turns. He has stacked the courts with a whole bunch of shady judges who have all kinds of complicity issues and concerns. So what it looks like and what he represents is someone who does not believe in the U.S. Constitution. He does not believe in democracy. He is definitely in the authoritarian camp. And there are a whole bunch of cult followers who don't seem to want to follow what he has to say. And then you have mainstream media that keeps, on a loop playing what he says and helping to expand his reach to more and more cult followers who clearly want to drink the Kool-Aid, whether it's filled with cyanide or not. So he is a threat to democracy, a threat to this nation, and he needs to disappear.
Yeah, when we come forward, obviously lots of news. We're going to continue this vein. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580, when we come forward.
Right time. More of Areva Martin in real time when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton. Here's the latest on the Black Information Network. The NAACP is urging President Biden to stop the sale of weapons to Israel. The organization says the move would build support for Biden from Black voters ahead of the election. A March poll found that nearly a quarter of Black voters said the Israel-Hamas war is an extremely important issue to them in the upcoming presidential race. A former South Carolina employee of Palmetto State Armory is filing a lawsuit against the company alleging racial discrimination. Tremel Washington says that while working for the gun manufacturer, he repeatedly found a noose left at his workstation. Washington reportedly complained about this to supervisors multiple times, but was ignored. He was later fired in what he alleges was retaliation for reporting the incidents. Washington also claims a coworker told him to wear a shirt reading, quote, "I can't breathe," end quote, a reference to Black people killed by police. That's the latest. I'm Amber Payton on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network.
Stop traffic in Anaheim Hills is ahead up to 25 minutes on the 241 North between Windy Ridge Toll Plaza and the 91. As you continue on to the 91 East, also in Anaheim Hills, between Glassell Street, Kramer Boulevard Split, and Highway 241, expect a 50 to 55-minute traffic jam. More heavy delays continue in Orange, up to 15 minutes on the 55 North between Chapman Avenue and the 91 Freeway. And over in downtown, left lane is still blocked with a stall on the 110 North before the 101, with a 15 to 20-minute backup running stops from the 10.
Find the perfect Father's Day gift with Macy's Gift Finder. In just a couple clicks, you'll get personalized gift ideas for every dad at every budget. Visit Macy's.com/gift finder and give love today at Macy's.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
In less than 24 hours, the Lakers' search for a new head coach has taken a massive turn. NBA sources are reporting that Connecticut men's basketball coach Dan Hurley is the man the Lakers really want for the job, and that contract talks for a long-term deal are already underway. Sources claim the Lakers and Hurley have been talking since Darvin Ham was fired on May 3rd. This revelation surrounding Hurley comes after J.J. Redick was believed to be the frontrunner because of his podcast connection with LeBron. If the Lakers can convince Hurley to take the job, this will be a major development for the franchise. Hurley is coming off back-to-back national championships at UConn, where he has won 70% of his games in 6 seasons. Hurley is a big-time college coach with the kind of profile the Lakers need. Stay tuned. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Yeah, yo, come on. Pick up the drums. At KBLA Talk 1580, we fight the power every day.
Yeah, gotta give us what we want. Gotta give us what we need. Hey.
I listen to KBLA and I love the commercials. I know what the commercials mean. I also, if I'm looking and trying to figure something out, I need something to talk to me that might hit me. And it happens on TV because, you know, every time they show a sporting event, they got the pharmaceutical companies back to back telling people how to fix the sickness on the same stuff that they sell them. So we get it.
Yep, we get it too, Chuck D. And that's why at KBLA Talk 1580, we don't black down.
Drop it. Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power. Fight the power.
To help combat climate change, LADWP is helping neighborhoods have better access to electric vehicles by awarding nearly $130 million in EV rebates to customers just like you. From big savings on used EVs to building new charging plazas, LADWP is charging ahead to help all Angelinos experience the benefits of EVs. Get rebates of up to $4,000 for a used EV and $1,750 for a charger. Learn more at ladwp.com/EV. That's ladwp.com/EV.
Have you been a victim or witness to hate or discrimination? Contact the California vs. Hate hotline to report the incident by calling 833-8-NO-HATE or visit cavshate.org. They'll help you access resources and support, including legal, financial, mental health, and mediation services. California vs. Hate is not affiliated with the police, and you can report anonymously. Use your voice. Report hate by calling 833-8-NO-HATE or visit cavshate.org. Res Radio 91.3.
Hey, LA residents, it's planting season and the perfect time to get shade trees growing around your home. LADWP and City Plants are giving every resident up to 7 free trees. That's right, 7 free trees delivered right to your door. Trees are great for the environment, help improve air quality, and can help you save on your bill when you use less air conditioning to stay cool indoors. Learn more at ladwp.com/free trees. That's ladwp.com/free trees.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
We are back, and in this hour, Fatima Gilliam, the author of Race Rules, What Your Black Friend Won't Tell You, and Dr. Rob Baker, professor at the University of Milwaukee in Wisconsin, and also a historian, are joining me as we are tackling today's somewhat complicated news. And in hour 2, New York Times bestselling author of My Vanishing Country is out with a new book. It's Bakari Sellers. His new book hit the stands, so hit the bookshelves April of this year. He's going to be in Los Angeles on next Tuesday at Malik Books. He's going to be signing copies of his book. He and I are going to be in conversation about his book. He wrote this book, and very interesting. He wrote the book because he's a CNN analyst, and he was on CNN during a period after George Floyd's murder, and he made some comments about how difficult it was for Black folks to watch that video of George Floyd being murdered. And he got comments on social media about that and decided to write a book and to really, you know, talk about what we were debating, right? Was it a moment or a movement? And the name of his new book is actually The Moment, Thoughts on the Race Reckoning That Wasn't, and how we can, or how we all can move forward and now. So we're going to talk to Bakari more about what inspired him to write this book, what he hopes to be the takeaway, and also about Black male voters. A lot of news about Black men, what they're thinking. 50 Cent has weighed in. Byron Donalds has weighed in. Tim Scott. I want to talk to Bakari, who's been very active in politics in South Carolina, about what he's hearing about Black male voters, particularly around the upcoming election. So make sure you stick around for hour two. Fatima, you know, Republicans are joining Trump in some ways by saying they're going to use the levers of government, the powers of government, be it the Congress or Senate, to, again, seek revenge, seek retribution because of the prosecution of Donald Trump by Alvin Bragg, who's a state prosecutor who had nothing to do with, you know, any of the government investigations. But Republicans are a cult, as you call it. Many of them are loyal not to a party and not even to ideology. They're loyal to Donald Trump, and they're willing to do anything to show their loyalty, including saying, we're going to basically stop governing. We're not going to pass any bills. We're going to find out ways to create these very, very bogus investigations. Do you think the American people are seeing how Republicans are using their power, not to improve the lives of Americans, but to perform and to seek praise and affirmation from Donald Trump?
You know, I think it really depends on how closely people are paying attention, because the reality is a lot of people are not reading about what's going on. They're not paying attention to the news. A lot of people are tuned out, checked out. So the challenge is reaching those kinds of people, excuse me, those kinds of people. And that is why you have these kinds of outcomes, right? This is why you could have people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who in a normal circumstance would not be hired at many companies, right? Because she's belligerent. She is too aggressive in how she deals with people. She's not anybody anyone would want to have at their barbecue or their friend's wedding, but somehow she gets reelected, right? And so these people are not just that they're in some sort of a cult where they follow Donald Trump, but they're more interested in power, right? Power and maintaining power at any cost. And I find it very interesting that if the Republican Party historically has tried to position itself as the patriotic party, right? The ones that like to wave the flags, but may not necessarily uphold all the principles behind it. But, you know, there's a lot of hypocrisy there, because if they truly were patriotic, then they would not support Donald Trump. They would not support anything that is antithetical to the rule of law. They would not support a system where you're coming for people when you had a judicial process where somebody was judged by a jury of their peers, right? So when they say that the DOJ and Merrick Garland are coming for Donald Trump because of his 34 felony convictions in New York, which is a state process, it's bogus, because you had 12 independent jurors who voted to convict him, some of whom were Trump supporters. So the challenge is how to reach people who are tuned out, checked out, so that they can understand that their democracy is in peril, right? A lot of people are apathetic. Honestly, I don't have the solution as to how to reach them. You know, I mean, even here in New York, we have a very troubling election taking place where Jamal Bowman is in jeopardy and being challenged by George Latimer, who's backed by AIPAC. And, you know, millions and millions of dollars are flooding that election. And I don't know if many people are paying attention, right? We're talking about George Latimer, who is a man, because I've been reading up about him, who is a man who wants to position himself as a friend of the Black community. Yet when Andrew Cuomo was going through, our former governor of New York was going through difficulty because, let's call it, he was a bit pervy and he was harassing women and crossing lines. And George Latimer, who again tries to position himself as a friend to Black people, tried to liken what was coming for Cuomo, which was accountability for violating women, and tried to say that what Cuomo was experiencing was akin to what happened to Emmett Till. right? That is so offensive, right? You had Hakeem Jeffries talking about Emmett Till beforehand, and you've got Latimer, who somehow is trying to be the friend of Black people. He is not the friend of Black people, because if you would never try to liken anything to the lynching of a 14-year-old child who then left Mamie Till without her own child, her only child, and try to say that somehow, Cuomo, who may have groped women, harassed women, is somehow like that, right? And has doubled down on tropes about Jamal Bowman, trying to liken him as to the angry Black man. And so my concern is whether it's Donald Trump or a case like this, an election out in the suburbs and in the Bronx of New York, people aren't paying attention. So how are we going to drive people to the polls? I don't know that answer. I hope they're listening to this. If they're in the New York area, please encourage your friends to vote for Jamal Bowman.
No, that's a really good point. And you took the time to do the research to learn about Latimer. And many people, Professor Baker, aren't going to do that. They're not going to do the Google search or even read something that maybe has been dropped off at their house or something that's been emailed to them. Do you have any concerns? Now, a lot of people say, Professor Baker, that it's early. Don't worry. Democrats were worry warts. We just get worried for no reason. It's just June. We've got to go through the summer, and people will get really serious about the election coming out of the convention in the third week of August. Do you buy that, or do you think there is something happening that is causing folks to be checked out in the way that Fatima just described?
Yeah, I think that if we wait to the conventions, which are coming real quick, we're going to be in trouble, because something's been happening and it just hasn't happened. There's so much misinformation that's taking place, and has been since the Tea Party. Let's not forget Alex Jones was out there back in the day talking about Sandy Hook. And a lot of brothers were watching that because it was in our feed, because it was pushed there by the algorithm. And so unfortunately, we have a lot of work to do, but I have a lot of hope. And I got a lot of hope in the streets. I spent some time in the classrooms, but I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, one of the most incarcerated states in the country. And brothers know that if they got caught with felonies, they would not have the privileges of running for office. You know what I mean? They wouldn't raise $300 million. So sometimes people like 50 Cent try to make these weird comparisons, and brothers that are getting felonies are not upper class, rich, billionaire kids. And so when we make that false comparison, I think we're in a little bit of trouble, but I got a lot of hope in young people, because we're getting rid of the toxicity in hip hop. We're getting rid of it. And hopefully people will turn out to vote in November.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, Professor, about 50 Cent, because Tim Scott also said he can draw Black voters, particularly Black men, because he says Black men are more drawn to Trump now that he is a convicted felon. And he says it's because it demonstrates the dual judicial system, our dual legal system, and that somehow Black men now appreciate, oh my God, Trump was targeted like we've been. This is how the silliness of this argument, but it's like, we get targeted, and now poor Donald Trump was targeted, and we get convicted, and he got convicted, so he's one of us now. I mean, that's kind of the silliness of this argument, but it's not just 50 cents. This is a U.S. Senator, Tim Scott, making that same argument. Can you break down for us how racist it is, and what a racist trope it is to suggest that Black people, whether you're a Black man or a woman, can identify with Donald Trump or anybody because he's a felon? Like, we like felons in our community. Like, we really like you if you are a felon.
Yeah,
that's cold.
We're living in.
Think about that, Professor. Think about that, Professor Rob. We're going to come forward, but I really want you to help us understand, because a lot of people don't see the racism that's baked into that analogy that just drives me absolutely crazy whenever I hear it. When we come forward, Dr. Rob is going to tell us why Black folks are not attracted to convicted felons, and we do not want a convicted felon to represent us in the White House. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580, when we come forward.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
Medicare Fraud Prevention Week focuses on the actions everyone can take to prevent Medicare fraud, errors, and abuse. Learn how to protect yourself and your loved ones by joining the Senior Medicare Patrol, or SMP, for Medicare Fraud Prevention Week, June 3rd through the 9th. Learn more at snpresource.org or by calling 1-877-808-2468.
Oh man, looks like Bobby needs a ride to the airport again.
Grab the keys. Who's taking Auntie and her friends to the swap meet?
Grab the keys.
How about we drop these boxes off at Miss Johnson?
Grab the keys.
Whether you're giving rides or hauling gear, you're all about getting things done. So do it all in a Chevy SUV. From the versatile Equinox and Sporty Blazer to the roomy Traverse, our lineup of SUVs will carry you through every adventure. All you have to do is
grab the keys.
That's how we do. Head to your local Chevy dealer, where well-qualified buyers get 1.9% financing on all 2024 Malibu, Colorado, Blazer, Equinox, Trailblazer, and Traverse limited models. Chevrolet. Together, let's drive.
1.9% APR for 36 months. Monthly payment is $28.60 for every $1,000 you finance. Example down payment 15.8%. Must finance with GM Financial. Some customers may not qualify. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 7/1/24.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, home of the 2024 Climate Justice Campaign.
We ask seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number and put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
Make a move into a home of your own. With City National Bank's Ladder Up Home Loan Grant, you could receive up to $20,000 that you never need to pay back. Use it toward your down payment, save on closing costs, or to buy down your mortgage rate. Find out more at cnb.com/ladderuphome. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Property must be in a qualifying market in California, New York, or New Jersey. Additional terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Terms are subject to change without notice. City National Bank is an equal housing lender. Member FDIC. NMLS number.
All right, Dr. Rob, break it down for us. Why is it just so offensive and a racist trope to say that Black people would like a president or any leader because they are convicted of felonies?
Right. That is such an essentialized statement. And, I want to start off by saying I love brothers and sisters that have come from the joint super much. When I lived in LA, I worked closely with Jim Brown and American and leaders that were out there doing the thing on the front line. So Black people, we love survivors. We love people who are resilient, So sometimes those stories connect. But when you say that we love felons, that's saying that we're all felons and we're not felons. And unfortunately, Tim Scott is the type of guy that I respect him because he's highly intelligent. You can tell by the way he talks, he's a communications master. But, when he jumped in front of Trump and said he loved him a couple of weeks ago, he already exposed himself. And so, unfortunately, I do think that people like Scott will have some resonance because they're just trying to play at the margins. We're talking about 2, 3, 4, 5%. And there are a lot of people out there that sound and look like Tim Scott. Yeah, we're in trouble.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, Robert is reminding us of the famous or infamous, however you want to call them, a diamond and silk. Remember, those were the Trump his black folks that he used to, bring out at all of his rallies. And he still has a cadre of black folks that show up at his rallies, show up to, we don't know if they're paid, Fatima. We really don't know because Donald Trump is such a liar. We can't believe anything that he tells us or anything even that we see, because we often find out that it's not what we think it is. But what does it say to you knowing again the history of the disproportionate way in which blacks are treated in our judicial system, this notion that somehow that black people who have some kind of involvement with the criminal justice system can relate to Donald Trump, whose experience is so completely different. We watched that courtroom experience, and we know that is not the experience of any African American person in any courtroom in this country. All of the breaks, all of the ways in which he was treated differently and given so much privilege. How does that make you feel as a lawyer? Because this is just complete nonsense.
I mean, I'm offended. And Tim Scott is just an example of how not all skin folk are kinfolk. All he does is tap dance his way to tomfoolery, buffoonery, and disgracing his ancestors. If he wants to go back into the field, let him do that by himself and not drag the rest of us, because I want some freedom. We all want some freedom, and we are not trying to go backwards. But it is exceptionally offensive because it is all about tropes, right? Like Dr. Baker was talking about. And then the whole thing like sneakers, right? Trump released these sneakers and we're all supposed to be about sneakers. Okay, maybe I just own maybe one pair of sneakers, but that's irrelevant. And so what it is, if we have any connection with the criminal justice system, that is because the police come for us, want to kill us, and there is inequity in terms of how we are prosecuted, right? More white people have a higher propensity to be smoking marijuana, but they're arresting and prosecuting and incarcerating Black people for it. But it's just doubling down on tropes. And what Tim Scott and others like him, they are just tokens, right? They are what I call Trojan horse Negroes, because what happens at the end of the day, they have the external patina of what they want, but what's happening on the inside is a threat to the majority of people of color and Black people in this nation. And all he does is embarrass his ancestors and threaten the equality that all of us strive for and want for in this country. And I wish more people would call him out. And people like 50 Cent, God help him. I mean, I feel a little bad because on some level, because when I worked at the United Nations World Food Program, I did a humanitarian deal with 50 Cent. But when he opens his mouth and says these things, he's encouraging more people to vote for somebody like Donald Trump or become apathetic and not show up and vote on election day. And so what I would like to see is more people starting to take an analytical, critical eye when they hear these kinds of comments and come to their own conclusions and recognize that the Republican Party is not the friend of people of color. The Democratic Party has problems too. I've criticized the Democratic Party as well. But Tim Scott, shucking and jiving every day to Sunday.
Yes, I agree with you. We need more people being analytical and reading behind the headlines and really looking critically at the differences. I mean, we'd have to search high and low to even name 20 Black Republicans, particularly any that have any position of power in that party. It's a party that historically, since it has become the conservative party, that has had a horrible history with African Americans and diversity and even other people of color. And every election cycle, there's this narrative, Dr. Baker, that they're going to make a play for the Black vote. And at other times, we hear Donald Trump particularly criticize. I mean, he's so critical of Chicago, Detroit, all of these Black cities, because, that's where he lives fundamentally. But when he needs the votes, then he, as you said, even votes on the margin, he goes out and he finds these people who are willing, like Scott and Donald, willing to do anything, Donald's, to be in power, to be in proximity to him, which is what's so offensive about their comments. And there are people that unfortunately will follow them. Before we leave, though, I want to talk about abortion and contraception. Why, Dr. Baker, do Republicans keep voting for these conservative measures around abortion and contraception when the majority of the country has made it very clear that women are not standing for men dictating our reproductive freedoms, our reproductive health issues? But this issue around contraception and abortion continues to be one that, I don't know, they obviously can't win on it because there's been proven time and time again in these special elections that they can't, but yet they keep passing laws or not passing laws that impact women's reproductive health.
Yeah, this This is one place where I think the Republicans are the most weak amongst their base because a lot of them have moved past this. So it's got to be not about votes. It can't be about polling. And I think this is really about protecting the white future, fear of a black planet. I think this is what it's really about because of the low birth rates. And the people having babies are brown people, and so if you're not going to come out and say that, but I think it's all about maintaining white power and white supremacy in this country.
So like force white women to have babies that they don't want, right?
I mean, I hate to say that. That sounds.
That
I'm not the best expert on that. It's not my subject, but I do believe, looking at the Supreme Court cases and how they're rolling back these cases, even starting with Shelby versus Holder to get control of the votes. I do believe there is this fear of this growing brown and black power base, and if you don't have white women voting with white men, their husbands, oftentimes you don't have the power that they have. And so for me, it's not like it's a political calculus. They're looking at voting power. There's this new the 2025 thing that's out there. There's a lot of covert things happening out there. And I ask people who say, okay, I got a lot of problems with Biden. I think he's doing better on the war. I think he needs to be stronger if he's going to get people of color or young people. But I do believe they got to peel back the narrative. Listen to the dog whistles. They don't got their back.
No, and the dog whistle is getting louder and louder and less disguised. I mean, some of the folks are just coming out, not even trying to dress up the racism and the white supremacy narrative that they are disseminating. They're being pretty upfront and direct, and we need to listen. Maya tells us when people show you who they are, believe them. And these Republicans are showing us over and over again who they are. It's just up to us now to believe them. Thank you so much. We're out of time, Fatima. Make sure, and Dr. Rob, thank you both for being here. Make sure you check out Fatima's new book, Race Rules, What Your Black Friend Won't Tell You, and download the LA Times app if you don't have it, and check out her new article just dropped today on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And make sure you stick around for hour 2. We're going to be talking to Bakari Sellers. He's a New York Times bestselling author and a book analyst on CNN. Check out all of the latest politics with Bakari Sellers when we come forward. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. Be good. Be well. I'll be